You're listening to the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the place where you, as a dad, will gain more tools for your fathering toolbox, and where moms and daughters are also invited to listen into the conversation. Now, here is your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dad Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. I'm thrilled you're here, especially if you're a dad who wants to add more tools to your fathering toolbox. Dad, you already know that when you're in the trenches as a dad, I hear dads tell me, I don't get a lot of kudos. I'm doing the hard lifting, the heavy lifting, and it's kind of a thankless job at times. And I'm here today. All my guests join me to say, Dad, we see you, we applaud you, we celebrate you. We want to equip you with more tools so that you can be better equipped at your God-given role as a dad. Even today, I want you to just picture yourself standing there with other dads. You're running your fathering race this week. I'm on the sidelines as your coach. I'm always cheering you on and saying, Dad, on your mark, get set, go. On your mark, topic or the theme, get set, filling that in with stories and stats. Go is always your practical action step to put your love for your daughter and your son into action this week. Well, today on the podcast, I've got a return guest. This is a three-peat, everybody. I don't know that I've ever had a guest on three times, but that's how much I love Tony Miltenberger. He is my friend. He's my fellow coach today, and we are cheering you on by giving you more tools, Dad, to understand yourself so that you can be the dad you want to be, the dad your daughter and son need you to be. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about Tony. I had him first on the podcast January of 24. Your greatest gift is on the other side of your wound. Then the last podcast was really about identifying your wounds so that you can be a better fathering leader. Today, we're titling this one, Karen for 20 years. And this is a man who walks his talk. I'm just telling you, that's why I've had him back three times. But I want to tell you, first of all, his new book, it's just come out. It's called Wisdom in the Wound: How God Uses Your Past to Shape Who You're Becoming. And I want you to hear the endorsement that I wrote for this book that had me literally in tears as I was reading it, because it was speaking to the depths of my own story and my own wounds. I said, Wisdom in the Wound is one of the most profound books on transformational leadership you'll ever read. Consider this book as an invitation to embark on a path toward deeper healing by exploring your beliefs and barriers, triggers and trauma, defenses and pretenses. If you're ready to engage in the process of facing your wounds, Tony Miltenberger will be your personal coach and mentor. Need I say more? Welcome back, Tony Miltenberger.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here. And you were so kind to write such a loving and thoughtful endorsement. I deeply appreciate your intentionality and all of that. It means the world to me. And it's been so great getting to know you over the last couple of years. I'm thankful for our friendship.
Oh, me too. And I mean every word that I said. And I believe that every dad listening, and if you're a mom or a wife or a friend to a man, I would encourage you to get this book, not only for you, but for that man. And it will guide him through. It's like, I literally, Tony, was picturing you like scooching your chair next to a dad, putting your arm around him going, hey, buddy, I'm in this with you. I'm a fellow dad. And let's be honest about the stuff that's there, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's be honest about the triggers, because we all have them. I think you normalize the fact that, hey, you're a dad. We hurt our kids. Hey, you're a human. You've been hurt and you hurt. And we know that hurt people. And that if we can attend to a healing process, even though, like we were just talking, before we pressed record about, does healing really come to wounds? Can we ever really truly heal? Well, I think we're on a continuum all the time, right? How healed are we? We're going to maybe still have something smart a little bit, an old college injury in your knee. You might still feel it 30 years later. But at the same time, it's not in the same, hopefully, place of acute pain as it was when you're on a healing journey. So here, 6 steps to identifying your wound. Let's jump in here. Tony, I want to quote something that you write in your book that says it best, Tony. You said, I've never found someone who doesn't have a wound. The sooner you can come to that conclusion, the sooner you can become self-aware and grow in wisdom. Your wounds, no matter how deep, do not have the final word. There is hope, there is healing, and there is a gift waiting on the other side. You come with hope today. Anything you want to say here now, forget set before we head into the more, I would say, deep dive into what wounds look like.
I'll just say this, like the wisest people that I've ever met, they don't have an absence of wounding, but they have an intimacy with their wound. And so all of this is about being okay with being broken. And everyone knows that the world is a broken place. We all talk about the brokenness. What I hope to address in today's dialogue and in this book is the idea that what does brokenness actually look like? What's the practical consequence and what's the practical response to brokenness in the world? And the wisest leaders, leaders like Jesus and Dr. Martin Luther King and Gandhi and all of these leaders were emotional, passionate leaders, but they were intentional in response. And they never, it seemed as if they never reacted emotionally. They responded intentionally.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So you're really saying the more we can be honest about what's there, the more we can attend to the wound instead of defending it or pretending it isn't there. And usually everybody else can tell there's a wound there. They're like, whoa,
Sure.
something smarted. And I think a great segue from even our last conversation to this one is talk about being more emotionally aware.
Yeah, the gift of what some people would call conscious leadership is the idea that I know how I'm wired and I've become okay with that. Like I'm messy. Like so one of the things about me is I hate Excel spreadsheets. And so I'm
Me
not
too.
a very detail-oriented guy. I love entrepreneurship. I love being a dad, but my wife needs to start packing and make lists like days in advance. And some of my kids do too. I do not. I need about 20 minutes and that's really about it. And so what does that mean? It means that I'm gifted in some areas and I need to not be in other areas. And so that's self-awareness. Now, what we don't often think about is that self-awareness becomes a key in how we show up in the relationships. And the more that you can understand who you are and what you bring into the relationship, the healthier the relationship will be.
So talk about the emotional intensity scale, because this is actually something I teach my clients as well. So we've seen the benefit in our own lives and with those we coach or counsel in using this scale.
Yeah, so the emotional intensity scale is a tool that we can all hold individually. So you're going to hold it differently than I'll hold it, but in in what it is on a scale from 1 to 10, anytime your emotional intensity spikes above a 6, it's always more about you than it is the other person. And so that means that if you're having, for example, if I'm driving down I-75 here in Ohio and somebody cuts me off and I decide to call them number one and I tell them all my feelings, I'm having an emotional intensity spike. And that spike, that response is not indicative of who I am as a person. I'm not somebody who would typically do that to someone else, but I'm responding emotionally because I've been spiked. And so the emotional intensity scale is really designed to help you say, oh, there's something happening inside of me and I need to slow down and think about it.
Yeah.
Now, what we don't often talk about is that emotional intensity spike can be good or bad, right? So if one of my sons takes a pick six, middle linebacker, takes it back, scores a touchdown, and I go full blown Midwestern dad, in that moment, I've made it more about me than it is about him. And I'm not saying that passion is bad or emotion is bad.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that when you're spiked emotionally, you need to be aware because that's when we're most prone to react instead of respond. And in that reaction, for me, usually, I end up being not the person who I want to be for the people that I love most.
Right. And so what we're saying to those of you listening, and we're talking to dads specifically, is that it can be easy to have your default be external. If you would have put your things away, or you wouldn't have left your shoes in the hallway, or if that driver hadn't cut me off, and we look outside of ourselves to blame what those external triggers are. What this is about is flipping the script and saying, what is happening inside of my nervous system, my body? And that higher than a 6, the 7, 8, 9, 10 means it's something most likely that goes back to your childhood. I'm going to even be that clear.
Yeah.
The origin of that trigger was set as a foundation years ago. You may feel disrespected. You've asked that 5 times. How could your child not remember that that's important to you? And it becomes, as Tony said, more about you than about them. And if you can trace that back and even ask Holy Spirit to do that, if you don't know how to do that, or both Tony and I are mentors and coaches. We do this professionally. You can reach out to us. We want to help you be able to get healing for where this is actually coming from so that you're not, you're not waiting, or someone else isn't waiting for the landmine to kind of blow if it's stepped on, because you don't have to live that way. That's reactive living instead of proactive living. So, Tony, one of the powerful things that you write in your book, which we're going to dive into today, is how to identify the wounds. We can talk all day long about, hey, you hit a spike, you hit a big number. Whoa, some wound got triggered. But I found your book so powerful in identifying what those actually are and giving a name to them. So, how about we start into the 5 types of wounds that you address in your book? We said this is 6 steps to really identifying these 5 wounds. So how about we talk first about the rejection wound? What is it and how does that look like? How does it show up? What does it look like?
The rejection wound is that feeling of being unwanted or unworthy, like I'm just not good enough, right? And maybe it's as a child, you felt dismissed by a parent or a peer group that didn't include you, any of those things. It can oftentimes show up as like a fear of abandonment or, that you don't want to be vulnerable. You kind of keep it shut down. I'm not going to share who I am because if I share who I am, you might reject me. And so that kind of idea of a rejection wound is I'm not going to let anyone close because if no one is close, then you can't hurt me. Now, where that shows up or the trigger is like maybe I didn't get invited to something. Maybe you're in a group chat and everyone's going out to dinner and you didn't get invited. And all of a sudden you go above a 6, right? And so you can start to look at those patterns and those patterns will kind of point you to the wound. So that's the first idea of the rejection wound. It's again, we talked about this in the last podcast. It's not malicious. Like no one's rejecting you as a child intentionally, but oftentimes as a child, we can feel like they reject us. So like maybe your parents chose work over you. And that's the feeling. And so you didn't matter to your parents is the way it felt. Now your parents wouldn't say that.
Right.
But that's part of how it looks is that rejection wound can show up like that pretty easily.
Yeah. And then when you're the main character in your own story, then you're saying, look, it happened here, 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 and here, even though all of those scenarios and those people may not even know each other. So then we have what's called a confirmation bias. Hey, I'm already biased in saying I don't matter, I'm unworthy. That's why I'm rejected, because it happened here, 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 and here. But that's the way that what we're talking about today, that you can begin to name it, which is a starting point. Oh, that's a rejection wound, which, by the way, Tony, when I first went to a counselor when I was 23 years old, I said, I just read 2 books on rejection. I did a timeline of my rejection story that started in my mother's womb. She didn't know she was pregnant with me till she was 5 months along. Went to the doctor and said, I think I have a cyst. I'm like, no, that'd be me. And that rejection wound started that far back. Again, unintentional on my parents' part. But I can tell you for the most part, can it smart still? Absolutely.
Right.
But it is not the 7, 8, 9, 10 most of the time anymore. As even I've allowed Jesus to come and sit with that little girl me, or the, in the womb me, and tell me his truth about me. And that might be something that those listening say, I've never done that. Yeah. I'd love to do work with someone on how to get there. And that's why I'm saying Tony and I are here for you. We've got your back. Okay, number 2, abandonment wound. What might that look like? How might it show up?
Yeah, that idea about feeling alone or unprotected or even unwanted, right? It's this the idea that maybe as a child your parents weren't around, right? That maybe they were physically absent or maybe they were emotionally unavailable. This is the wound that I wrestle with the most, right? Like it's this, I often call it not feeling seen, like I didn't matter, right? And the truth is my parents did the absolute best they could, and yet they had unplanned twins, then they got divorced, and then they were trying to figure out how to fall in love again, right? And so all of these things led me to this belief that happened at a really young age, like, oh, I just don't matter, like I'm not seen, right? This fear of being left, this fear of not mattering, of irrelevance, and all of these things. And so, for me, some of my triggers can be if I feel like somebody's ignoring me, right? Or they're not respecting my experience here, right? Sometimes, like, even I was in my young 20s, and I had bought my first house, and all my parents came over, and I was throwing the ball with a roommate. I had a guy roommate before I got married, and I was throwing the ball, and my stepmom was like, "You can't throw the ball in the house." And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"Yeah, I bought this house." This is verbatim what I said. I bought this house so that I could throw the ball in it, right? And it was not like she had her own stuff going on in her response, but then I had my own stuff, like, "Oh, you can't tell me what to do," right? Like, again, that, like, I know you don't think I matter here, but I matter here. And that was
Yeah.
kind of, which is, was just my again, because I'm the main character of my story. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah.
Looking back in hindsight, I can say there was a lot more going on there than meets the eye.
Totally. Yeah, you're not the boss of me.
Right.
I'm like a 3-year-old kid with my hands on my
That's
hip.
right. Right.
I think the other thing that comes to mind, Tony, is that sometimes I've had clients say, my parent is so different now. So I have a hard time going back to when I was 12 or 5, when they were a different version of themselves. And so it may feel disloyal to you to sit in the injury from way back there. But I'm speaking for myself, but I'm guessing, Tony, you're with me, saying it's worth going there and being honest about that. The truth will set you free, because the things in the present, again, that are being triggered are hardwired. The wiring is behind the wall. That's just the switch that flipped on. And you can sit with both, the tension of both. And thankfully, if your parent is in a different place, you can bring the present into the past. You can, in a way, tell that younger child self, you're going to want to hear the story later on. That wasn't the end of the story,
And when you do that, then you also give yourself permission to begin to look at your parents' healing as a parallel journey to your own healing.
Yeah, that's
so,
excellent.
We often look at our parents through kids' eyes because we haven't dealt with the pain that we had as a kid.
Yeah.
But as you deal with that pain, you can begin to build that empathy muscle for your parents, saying, I can't even imagine what it was like to raise me in that situation in that way. And look at how much work they've done, and look how good God is. And, like, man, it gets me fired. My parents today are completely different than they were. Praise the Lord. Right.
And I'm different.
I'm different. Right. And that's, in the Christian faith, we call that sanctification, the process of becoming more like Christ. And, in parenting, we just call that maturity. Right. And I'm so thankful that my kids get grandparents that are different than the parents that I grew up with.
Yeah, there you go. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to keep talking about this theme of how to identify wounds. We'll be right back.
Are you a dad who has ever desired a deeper connection with your daughter, but haven't known how to go about it? Let's Talk Conversation Starters for Dads and Daughters is the very resource you need. Dr. Michelle wrote it with you dads in mind. This book will support you with scripted questions, equip you to decode your daughter, and inspire you with stories of other dads and daughters. Don't wait any longer to be the hero you want to be and that your daughter needs you to be. So, to let the talking begin, head on over to drmichellewatson.com/books and order your copy today. This book will become a favorite in your fathering toolbox and will give you the answers you've been looking for. That's drmichellewatson.com/books. Now, back to the Dad Whisperer podcast.
Welcome back. I'm here today with my friend, Tony Miltenberger. This is a three-peat, his third time joining us here. 6 steps to identifying your wounds, where I'm talking about what these specific wounds look like and how they show up. So we've talked about the rejection wound, the abandonment wound. That's easy to say. Tongue twister. Number 3, betrayal wound. Describe that one.
The betrayal wound is that feeling of being deceived or let down by someone you trust. And again, what I'm talking about here is like little T trauma. So I'm not talking about big T trauma. Little T trauma, this idea that it wasn't malicious and intent. So let down could be like, maybe you felt or interpreted that your parents lied to you, that there were a bunch of broken promises, that, maybe they had a job that required them to leave and they weren't allowed to negotiate with that, high capacity. And so So this could show up in your life through control issues, or maybe you've got hypervigilance, or maybe you need to be, everything needs to be your way right away. And so you could be triggered by someone who takes credit for something that you did, or someone who doesn't care or doesn't show up and do what they say. Like if you feel emotionally spiked when someone doesn't follow through because they said they were going to, it's possible that you're wrestling with a version of a betrayal wound. Now,
Okay.
betrayal has a lot of connotation to it. I know in today's culture, I don't want you to think about it like infidelity, although that could certainly be part of it. That's more big T trauma. Little T trauma, betrayal is like, you promised that you were going to take me somewhere and you didn't show up.
I did and you didn't. Okay,
Right.
number 4, humiliation wound. What's that look like? How's it show up?
The humiliation wound is that idea of like, man, I'm just not good enough. Like I'm not, performance equals love. Like I have to do this or else you're not going to love me well. Right. It's perfectionism, it's defensiveness, self-sabotage, it's constant need for validation. Look, social media was designed for people with who wrestle with these woundings, right? And it's you can see people who are like, "Oh, put it out here. I need to be," and it's that if you feel like that you're never good enough for the people in your life, and when somebody kind of bumps up against that, you emotionally spike. That might be a place where you need to spend some time. If you make a minor mistake at work and you're feeling overwhelmed or embarrassed, or I found this to be true too. If you have a tendency to lie about things to try to protect your image, it might be possible that you're dealing with a humiliation wound. And you can lie. I see parents do this sometimes with their kids. They lie to their kids about what's really going on instead of just being honest because they don't want their kids to think poorly of them.
Right. Okay. Thank you for breaking that one down. And then the last one, injustice wound.
Oh, the injustice wound. This is that feeling that life is just unfair. Right. And so this is like the child who was raised in a highly strict home or overly critical that may feel like they have to fight to be heard or respected. This is kind of a wound that bumps up against my wound of needing to feel seen. Like these are kind of partner wounds. And so if you have rigid thinking, if you wrestle with anger a lot, you have a difficulty accepting grace or self, this is a part of that process, right? That maybe you live in that injustice wound. Oftentimes this can show up in the way that you parent. If you are like, if you don't do this the right way this time, I'm blah, 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 right? Like it's like we have an over response to a lack of respect in the way that they're treating you. Don't you know what I've done for you? That might be a sign that they're bumping up against an injustice wound.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's repeat these. So these are specific kinds of wounds. Thank you, Tony, for naming them. No doubt. I mean, I would say I'm more in the rejection wound. That's the one that has had a history in my life, though in some ways I have all of them.
Sure.
Right?
For sure.
A bit of all of these at times.
Yeah. Let me give a little bit of disclaimer and then I'll run through them real quick is that these are just some names of wounds to give you handles so that as you begin to kind of discuss and identify what your wounding is. And so it's not an all-encompassing list. And This is not work that you should do by yourself. This is work that is designed to be done with others. This book is really just a catalyst to get you into the dialogue. Your spouse can help you. Obviously, coaches like Michelle and I can help you. Counselors can help you. But here are the wounds: rejection wound, abandonment wound, betrayal wound, humiliation wound, and injustice wound. Okay. And the more that you can get your arms wrapped around what your wound is, the more authentically you'll start showing up for your kids and your partners and your friends in a way that honors who you really want to be, Dad. Because we know that if you're listening to this, you want to be a dad of integrity and peace and someone who absolutely loves his kids well.
Yeah. So we're saying today 6 steps to identifying your wounds. So I'd say step 1, name it. Mm-hmm. These are names to identify and connect with, because I think it's really validating to be able to name what you lived through, that no parent ever says, hey, I know I'm rejecting you, or hey, I know I'm humiliating you, but you get to name it. So I'd say step 1, name it. Step 2, what would you say, Tony, next? Once you've named it, and you want to move toward healing, what's
Yeah.
the next step in identifying your wound?
I would say start to look for patterns and emotional triggers, right? You look for the things that happen in your life that cause you to spike. And I'm a big fan of writing this down. You're going to pull that common thread, circle themes that show up the most, really start to look at this like, man, what aggravates me more than anything else in the world? And you can start to see themes in the way that you respond.
And would you say the emotional intensity scale goes with that? What's spiking me?
I would. Yeah. I would say that when you know that you're above a 6 on that emotional intensity scale, you're spiked, you've had an emotional trigger, you can really begin to start looking at like, man, I always, when somebody cuts me off on the highway, I always respond this way.
Right. So
Or
those are the themes.
those are the
patterns
themes. Yeah,
that go
absolutely.
with the numbers. Number 3, what would you say is the next step to identifying and healing from wounds?
And you and I are partners on this one because you have talked about this a lot, is looking back at early childhood influences. I really do believe that most wounds happen to us, that little T trauma between the ages of 4 and 12. So one of the things that my counselor says often is the bigger the emotion, the younger you probably were when you experienced it.
Yep.
And so think about that and begin to kind of lean into like, what was happening in my life between 4 and 12?
Right.
What were my parents doing? How did I perceive it? When were those moments where I felt hurt or misunderstood or even abandoned? Like what was going on? Was another child born? Did we have to move? One of the things that happened to my oldest son, we were 8 years old when I took my first lead pastor job. He was 8 years old when I took my first lead pastor job. And the message that I gave him was, hey, it's really important for my work that you stand here and behave. And the message that he received from that was performance equals love.
And it was stated or implied?
Implied, 100% implied.
100% implied.
100% implied. As a matter of fact, he would say that we pressured him into performance. Now, Karen and I have talked about this, and we've had now that he's 19, we've had a lot of adult conversation around this. And that was never our intent. But that's the reality, is his wound is that he feels like if he doesn't perform, he's not lovable. And
is that a performance wound, or would you call that something else under one of the other 5?
I might call it a kind of it's a version of a humiliation wound. Like, hey, if you don't behave, you're not good enough.
Or we're embarrassed.
Yeah,
you're embarrassing our family.
You're embarrassing our family. Yeah. In the position I was in, our home was directly connected to my job. We lived in a home that was provided by the church. Okay. And so there's this feeling like, hey, if I lose my job, we lose our house.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. Right. And so like, now I will say this today, the other side of his wound is his greatest gift. He's an incredible leader and he holds responsibility better than most 19-year-olds. Right. Like I've never seen a leader like him at his age.
Wow.
Right. Wow. Like, and so God has really redeemed that in his life, but that's, when he was in high school, we would ask him questions and he would say, "Stop pressuring me, Dad." And I'm like, I'm really just asking, son. Like, I don't even care what the answer is.
This is what I do for a living. Right? I'm good at asking questions.
So that's kind of how that works.
Okay. So the other thing I just want to say about this one is that as you are looking at these things in your own life, did you all notice how Tony asked all the who, what, when, where, how question? How old was I? What was going on? Where were we living? What was happening in the family? How did that shape me? So those kinds of questions that we're encouraging you to ask your kids are also questions you can ask yourself in identifying your wounds, your triggers, your spikes. Okay, step number 4, identifying your wound. What would you say?
Connect the dots, right? So now that you've got kind of the themes and patterns and you've got your childhood messages, let's start to put those things together and see where there is alignment, see what show up, what core belief. I just kind of did that through Connor's life and telling a little bit of his story, is that like, this is what was happening. These are his emotional responses. And you can really begin to see like, man, when I was a kid, this is what was going on. Here's what spikes me today. And I'm a big fan of putting this down on paper or typing it into something so that you can actually see it. I think when you can see it, it's a lot easier than when you're just talking about it or, that kind of process. Looking at it in front of it really helps you process the information differently.
And, I think a version of connecting the dots, and speaking of getting it out in front of you so it doesn't hamster wheel loop in your brain and not get out, the little mouse doesn't, or the hamster doesn't get out of the cage unless you open the door, is to even do a timeline perhaps of your life
Yeah.
where you put like 10 significant events. They don't have to all be positive or negative. It can be any version of that, but where you're externalizing those events to see them on even a timeline could be a version of connecting those dots that sometimes you may think but you don't actually really know because you haven't seen it outside of yourself. Okay, step number 5 to identifying wounds.
Naming the wound. Step 5 is actually naming it and write down a 1-sentence description of what your wound is. So
Okay,
for
so we
me,
talked a little bit about that on step
yeah.
number 1,
Yep.
giving it a name.
Mhm.
How would step 5 bridge the gap from step 1 to step 5, would you say?
You're really going to give it a name that feels like it identifies with the other parts of your story, right? And so now, the wound that I call my own is that feeling of my wound is I don't feel seen, right? And so that's not, that's connected through my story. So when I say that to myself, what I know is that that's connected to this, and this. And so it begins to give it handles in a way that makes it personal. So don't just name it, right? When you initially start, you're going to name it because you're going to have some triggers and intensity and all that kind of jazz. But now when you name it in step 5, you're going to give it a history. You're going to give it an identity because you now know where it came from. And it's now less scary because now it's a part of who you are.
Oh, that's a good way to say it. It does take some of the power out of it
Yeah.
by naming it. In neuroscience, it has shown over the years, by naming it, you move through it more to healing. Like it's doing something in your brain to move from right and left hemispheres to get more of synchrony between right brain is more the abstract. We felt it. We may not know where to place it on a timeline. It has more movement to it. Whereas the left is all the L's. It's linear. It's logical. It has language. So I think by getting to the step 5, it's getting this more concrete, like you said, to give it a context. And then again, I just want to say before drum roll number 6 on the steps, Tony and I aren't in any way, shape, or form saying, oh, this is just a quick fix.
No.
If you just do these quick things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll be healed.
It's a journey for sure.
It is a journey, a process. In fact, one of my friends always said, God must really like process because everyone I know is in one.
Yes.
And so what would you say for number 6?
Number 6 is kind of like
identifying in wounds.
Yeah. How do we carry it forward? Reflect on how it begins to shape your life. So for example, how does it show up in your daily decisions? How does it show up in your parenting, your relationships, your leadership? When do you notice it the most? You're kind of beginning to see, like, one of the questions that I love to ask myself is, am I making this decision intentionally or am I responding out of my wound? Right. And so the other day, I'm president of the athletic boosters in my little town that I live in. And somebody sent an email, a scathing hot email about a decision that we made. And I had this emotional reaction that was like through the roof. Like it was like, because he didn't come to any of the meetings. He wasn't a part of it. Like, and he was criticizing, he was being super critical. And so I had this emotional response. And at first I was like, keyboard warrior. I was like, started typing out this email and I was like, let me tell you about all my feelings and all this stuff. And I was like, Tony, you're so angry right now.
Right.
You're responding.
What number were you?
I was a 7, 8 for sure.
Okay.
For sure. I was coming in hot. Right. And so I was like, man. And the only thing I could do is delete the email and not send it back. And so I waited.
But you got it out.
I got it out.
I call it popping the zit. And that's kind of step 1. Just get it out.
Get it out. There. Right. Get it out. And so
it doesn't have a context.
So
yet.
Still in this day, right? I have to decide, am I responding? Am I popping the zit all over someone, or am I being intentional in my response? So deleted the email, waited 3 days, resent something that was much more reasonable to desired outcome. And now me and this guy are friends.
Wow, look at that. So that last one on reflecting on how it shapes your life is really a beautiful way to say, as you move through this process, naming, looking at the numbers, owning it, not defending it, even asking others for input. You talk about that in your book, like asking others to help you identify wounds and being vulnerable in that way, where they're not belittling you, but they're helping shed light on your blind spots. And you're moving it through and you've named it and you've connected dots. This whole idea, reflecting on how it shaped your life, I think it gives you that empathy for yourself and curiosity for your own story that you've talked about being really key in fathering leadership and in any leadership. But I think even adding to that one is bringing that then before the Trinity in the throne room of heaven, where you are known and seen and created in the context of a relationship where you matter and you're loved. And then you get to rework the wounds and the messages with truth that can only come from the author of truth.
And one of my friends from the podcast, Carlos Whitaker, he says you have to pray the promise, not the pain.
Oh, that's good. Pray the promise.
Right. And so the promises of God, right? We have a tendency to want to pray the pain around our wound. But I think the challenge here is to pray the promise that gets us to the other side. Right. And so
good.
Good. And this is where scripture memory and all these different, daily disciplines that we have can be such a huge part of the healing process that keeps me in a best place so that I can be the best dad and husband and leader that I can be for my community.
I love that. Well, I got to end with a go step. So you've shared these 6 steps, ways to process. People can go back, listen to it again. It's so profound and powerful. So now, end step, if you were to give dads listening one way to take action today, because it may feel really daunting with all those steps and all the process, what would you say to that dad to encourage him to take one step forward to start his healing journey?
I would say get out one sheet of paper and at the very top of it, write my wound and just begin to take notes on it. Just observe it. Just see where it shows up. And then everything else, steps 1 through 6, they'll just come. I promise. The Lord does not want you to stay stuck in your wound. He wants to move you through it. He wants you to get to know the edges. He wants you to be able to respond in his image. And I believe that.
So that you can get to the gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the other side of your wound. So Tony's book, Wisdom in the Wound, How God Uses Your Past to Shape Who You're Becoming. And where can people find you?
I'm embarrassingly easy to find at TW Milt on Instagram or wisdominthewoundbook.com. You can pre-order your book. If you text the word BOLD to 66866, we'll send you the foreword and the introduction via email. We'd love to get that to you as soon as you can.
Give the number again.
66866. So text the word BOLD, BOLD, to 66866, and that'll get you the foreword and the introduction. And we love giving that gift out to people. It's a really great way to get started to see if maybe this book might be a fit for you.
Awesome. Well, today on Your Mark has been 6 steps to identifying your wounds. I've been here with my friend Tony Miltenberger. And Dad, I trust that this is a beneficial conversation that will help you look at your own story with more grace and compassion, empathy, curiosity, so that you can move toward healing. Well, I'm Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the Dad Whisperer, signing off and encouraging you to make today a day, Dad, where you intentionally and consistently invest in pursuing your daughter's hearts. Go, Dads.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. If you're looking for more resources to support the father-daughter relationship, or if you want to connect personally with Dr. Michelle, you can find all the information you need at drmichellewatson.com. That's drmichellewatson.com. And remember, you can listen to the Dad Whisperer podcast anytime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a review. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again on the next edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.